El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages, including Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. A lot of stuff we're talking about here today, but just a little bit of a focus on that impending weather. Not our usual focus, I will say, more than a little bit, but we have quite a lot of local organizations, schools, and more battening down the hatches ahead of this storm. EPISD, YISD, SISD, so the El Paso, Socorro, and Isleta Independent School Districts announcing classes and offices closed and canceled on the other order around there for tomorrow. UTEP moving to all virtual its classes. There will be the women's basketball game, I believe, going forward. Statements coming out from El Paso Electric about their preparations for this winter storm. So it is definitely affecting a lot of things, and it's a little bit hard to ignore from this standpoint. So we're going to talk a bit about it because, yeah, if you all go out and buy all the toilet paper, I'm going to be very disappointed with you, but we are looking at somewhere around a few solid days, or at least more than, I believe, 60 hours was the best estimate I heard of solid freezing temperatures in our area. So there's more than a little bit going on with it. But again, the implications coming out of it are almost as, well, not in the short term significant, but the lasting impacts on how this storm goes out. As you heard at the top of the hour there is just a whole lot of impacts going on all across the country from this. Have a friend that is driving into the region at this point. I joked and then realized I was maybe a little bit more serious than I intended to be, that he's bringing the weather with him as he's coming from the east to spend some time here. And we're definitely seeing some of that weather that he was experiencing dragging along with him. So I'm wishing him safe. And if you're going out on the roads, if you're out on the roads right now, didn't seem too bad. It was my last check outside right before we got on air. But overnight, it was supposed to be getting pretty bad, according to our news partners over at KFOX 14 and all the forecasts that we are getting. So you may have been seeing around town already those lines, those weather operations, as I believe the signs on the actual I-10 were reporting. And that's the icing. The de-icing or the pre-icing, would that be the correct phrase for it, going on out there? The city of El Paso already putting out statements that they're expecting overpasses to be iced over. Thermodynamics, the air goes all around them and they get the coldest. So it's very likely to happen that way, as we have a Leroy Chuck joining us over on the social media, facebook.com/Talk El Paso. But the implications, again, that come from this, we got to get through this storm. Do not get me wrong, and that is still important. And stay bundled. Again, people, pipes, plants, and pets. Keep all of those safe and in check. Personal vehicles, if you want to add another one there, just be careful as you're starting those up and de-icing them. Actually, unice your window. I've seen more than a couple people around the region, when we do have those freezes, just do like a little strip in front of what the driver may see. Don't do that. Don't be that guy or person going out there and taking everyone else's lives in your hands. But more specifically, expect that there's going to be delays as we go around. And again, very specific cancelings going on. Most of the major school districts, UTEP, even some city offices getting reports on now going to be closed. Other nonprofits, community groups, businesses announcing similar kind of things. Apparently, there's a lot out there that basically follow what EPISD does. Makes a certain kind of sense that if this major school district that your business is operating in is not going to be available, it will probably affect, among other things, your staff and employees and ability to provide the service. So again, all of this to be expected and baked in for these next couple of days, and even affecting some of our programming here, the El Paso History Radio Show on this weekend, going to be doing a re-airing just as an abundance of caution with a new programming starting the week after. So these are just some of the factors coming into it here today. So again, if you're seeing anything bad out there already, it's supposed to be coming in overnight, but just stay safe out there on the roads. But just some of the implications coming out of this, including from ERCOT. If you go over to our website, ktsmradio.com, they are reporting they are ready for the winter storm. President Brad Jones from interim president, rather, Brad Jones of ERCOT says they've been working since last year's shutdown to prepare for an event like this. Also something that Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been speaking about the work that they have been hoping to see put into place here, because this does come, of course, just not exactly a year, but pretty close to a year after a lot of failure of the grid in other parts of Texas came forward. And again, that becoming a focus of some campaigning, frankly, against Abbott. Not so much from his own side and party. They all have their own lines that they're going with. Michael Pat is also saying that Anthony ISD will be closed tomorrow. Not surprised. Most of them, I will say, are then saying normal operations on Friday, but we'll see. More than a couple of images and GIFs getting posted up in these comment threads of some of the bad behavior on the roads that we've seen around our region previously. So even if the closures don't continue through the end of the week, we're expecting between 1 and 3 inches. And yes, from my northern friends and the people from climes north of here in general, no, that is not an overwhelming amount of snow. But for everyone here, yes, that is way, way more than we are used to. And you're going to be good out on these roads. I am going to avoid them as much as I possibly can. But so thanks for that update there, Michael, because, yeah, a lot of schools not going to be in. El Paso Electric saying that EPE has been preparing for months to handle inclement weather that can be expected during the winter season. During this time, we've reviewed and executed our preparedness plan to minimize any impact to customers during the extreme weather expected in our region. While unforeseen circumstances can occur that may be outside of our control, saying they are ready to respond safely and quickly to prevent power outages and restore power to customers in event of service disruption. This from the El Paso Electric president and CEO, Kelly Tomlin. So I am still very happy to be where we are in relation to this, and as much as been talked about with ERCOT and the focus on it, I'll ride this out here as opposed to anywhere else within the state at this particular point in time. Again, the electoral implications of this are going to be becoming more clear as we get through this storm. Again, at least for our region, expected essentially through at least the early part of the weekend, if not a little bit longer. We'll see how long it takes to clear for the rest of Texas. And once the snow starts clearing, what will be happening and how happy or unhappy voters in those climes are going to be about this. Not entirely sure if this will be a make or break moment for the Abbott campaign. I'm not sure that there would be a break moment outside of literal defenestration, essentially. But aside from that, anything else going on from that campaign, probably going to continue apace, given the strong fundraising numbers and the just built-in rallying cry of the O'Rourke campaign being opposed to it. So all of that, Leroy Chuck letting us know he's not driving tomorrow because nobody knows how to drive in normal conditions, let alone a little snow. That is absolutely pretty much in the back of my mind, taking over all my thought processes, even just considering coming in for this show tomorrow. Shall we say the plan is to do it and be here, roads be damned. I've driven in worse, having lived in climes much farther north, including Illinois and the East Coast. But again, I'm almost more worried about everyone else going to be out on the roads at that time. So just do me a favor and don't be out around noon as I'm trying to make my way in. I would consider it a personal favor, but we'll see how it all goes. Plan is for us to be up, but at the very least, we figure this kind of information needs to be getting put out there. So already due for our first break here. We're not just talking about the weather this show. Also going to be talking about some more of those supply chain issues, perspective internationally on what the heck is going on with it, even outside of this winter storm, plus what it means for our region and some of the developments we might be seeing going forward. Kind of our focus this week. So coming back with more Talk El Paso after this break. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Vinton, a stalled truck is blocking the left shoulder. It's causing a backup on both sides of the freeway. I-10 westbound at Wrestler, a disabled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder, and it's heavy slowing from Wrestler to Thorne. We got a crash that's blocking the on-ramp at Sunland Park to I-10 westbound. And North Carolina at Stiles, an injury accident there, and you see slowing where Franklin meets Stiles meets North Carolina. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the new Our American Stories podcast.
Check out the new Our American Stories podcast, the show where the American people are the star, telling inspiring stories of history, sports, business, faith, and love, and your stories too. Subscribe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Ben and Ashley I, Almost Famous, is the Bachelor Recap podcast you can't miss. Breaking down every episode from Bachelor Nation.
Clayton begs for her to stay. That's a nuts response.
Yeah.
So that absolutely
fantastic.
That absolutely tells me that this will be an awesome season. And
I agree.
Listen to Ben and Ashley I, Almost Famous, on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo.
Hi, Phil Swift here. When that next storm is barreling down, get prepared with the Flex Seal family of products. Floods can destroy your home. Push Flex base deep into cracks and holes to help prevent flooding. Seal doors and windows, patch leaky roofs and downspouts. Remember, when that storm is coming your way, keep your family safe and dry. Be prepared with the Flex Seal family of products. Available at flexsealproducts.com and fine retailers.
Under Governor Greg Abbott, the Texas economy is full speed ahead. Ranked the #1 state for business every year he's been governor. #1 in exporting products all over the world. #1 in businesses moving to the state. And well over 1 million new jobs since the pandemic. Under Governor Abbott's leadership, the Texas economy is the envy of the nation. But under Biden and Beto, Texas would come to a screeching halt. Open borders causing chaos and endangering our safety. Higher taxes hurting families and businesses. The Green New Deal crushing our economy. On March 1st, vote to keep Texas on the right track. Governor Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Text and whatever. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show throughout our 2 hours, 4 to 6 p.m. as we are these days, including over on our social pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk on most, if not all of those, as we have Leroy Chuck and Michael Pettis chiming in right now. That winter storm taking up a lot of brain space for a lot of people right now. Most of the major school districts, and even more, including Anthony ISD, announcing no operations tomorrow, so planned accordingly. But this isn't the only moment recently that we've been dealing with issues of a trade and travel variety. Of course, it's been more than a little bit of a discussion we've had about what is going on with just logistics, resources, getting stuff in stock. This probably won't help, but is an isolated incident amongst a ongoing concern, personally and regionally, nationally, internationally, when it comes to just being able to get stuff and get it where you need it, where you want it. The whole just-in-time supply thing, not really working for anyone's timing at this point in time. So I was able to have a conversation with Jake Phipps of Phipps International, a manufacturer of the stuff that goes into developments, high rises, multifamily housing, and even subdivisions. Some of the stuff that we've been talking about here locally as of needing and ship stuff internationally, or used to, still trying to, but some of the situations I was able to discuss with him about what the heck is going on with trade, transit, movement of material, and the goods necessary to kind of do what you want. He's got his fingers in all of that, and was able to talk with him about what the expectations are, what are the situations he's seeing, and what the outcomes might be here. So able to talk with him a little bit earlier. Here is that interview. Enjoy. Joining me now, we have Jake Phipps, CEO of Phipps International. Thank you very much for joining us today.
How are you today?
Oh, doing just fine. Thank you again for being here with us. We have had a lot of discussion about the supply chain, the impact we're seeing on it, and you are in a unique position with your company, Phipps International, and the work that you do affects kind of a few things we've dealt with here. Supply chain delays, but then also the supply chain, the creation issues, actually getting things produced and out there, because you are a producer of building materials primarily for like multifamily and kind of more advanced developments, right?
Yes, sir.
So when we're dealing with the kind of stuff that you look at, it's been a rough couple of years at this point. It's starting to seem like.
It has been a rough couple of years. I've had an office based in China, in Guangzhou now for 20 years. I also have offices in Istanbul, Turkey, and Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. I've been doing import now for quite a long time, and I've never seen anything this catastrophic as far as delays when it comes to shipping. Also, price increases on freight have caused products going onto the shelves and then going to real estate developers. All of the prices have been elevated and increased across the board, especially in my sector.
So to give people a little bit better idea of exactly what we're talking about, how do you describe the industry and what you produce and that kind of aspect of it?
Yeah, so I'm a manufacturer, of building materials, interior finishes. So furniture, kitchens, countertops, flooring, tile, plumbing fixtures, bringing product direct from about 18 different countries really into the United States. And I've been doing this for close to 20 years now.
And so you're saying that this has been one of the worst times just on the supply side of it, on what you have been doing with getting your raw materials that go into all the products you're then putting out. How has that evolved and that situation changed over this past couple of years?
Yeah, so just so folks at home understand that the raw material, is the logistics of moving it around from around the world. If it's minerals, trees, whatever it may be, those shipping prices have caused a huge inflation in the raw materials market, which then once it gets to the factory to produce and make an end product, you've got delays within the factories because of COVID. Through the past few years, you've got port congestion, coming out of China or any of the Asian markets or even European markets from shutdowns from COVID. So you have shortness on labor, you've got price increases on raw material, and then you have the shipping back a finished product into the United States. Just, the price of shipping now is 6 times what it was, 18 months ago. And then you've got congestion at the ports, especially on the West Coast, where goods are getting stuck there sometimes for 60 to 90 days before a container can clear and get delivered to a warehouse and then get to either a retailer or delivered to, a household.
Now, that last aspect you just mentioned there has been a particular concern around here, wondering what is going on with that. We've seen the pictures of even just the maps of the ships that are essentially parked in rows out at sea, which is a strange concept to consider, waiting to deal with the situation. It's been kind of hard to put a pin into what is going on with that. What's the sense that you're getting of how that stands at this point?
Well, California itself, they created some rules and regulations for no truck can come in that's less than 10 years old. We've got 80,000 truckers we're short on in the United States because our government has been able to pay them just as much money to sit at home and not work. And then we have California specifically is a very, very large, especially Long Beach, importer of all of the PPE world for all the COVID protection materials. Pretty much everything comes out of China and hits Long Beach port because it's the fastest to get it here by container load. So that's caused congestion. And then we're short on employees and workers, not getting along with the unions in the California ports. And we don't have a system and enough technology and infrastructure to be able to handle the amount of product that's coming in. And consumer consumption on the internet has went up, probably 4 or 5 times since COVID, since everybody's been at home. Everybody buys on the internet. So it's been easier to buy, quicker to buy. You don't have to go to a store. And, so a lot of these companies have sold out of their inventory and are fighting to get containers and shipping and get products into the U.S.
So in short, it's still a mess, it sounds like.
It's still a mess. Yes, correct.
All right. Again, if you're just joining us, the guest right now is Jake Phipps of Phipps International, CEO there. I want to find out, see what they're talking about here, what they produce, and therefore what you can kind of divine from their issues and what that means for our area. You can find them at phipsandco.com. That's PHIPPSANDCO.com. So we've had some similar issues in our area. A lot of single family development that happens is a primary focus in our area, but we've seen a similar kind of squeeze going on when it comes to apartments and multifamily in general, with serious demand going on, but serious inability to get in the stuff of all levels, be it the raw materials and labor as well, frankly, to be able to continue expansion of that to meet the demand. So we're looking at a squeeze for, it's hard to say how much longer, but in general, where you are doing this kind of work, what impact is this having? What response are you getting from your clients then about what they need and what this is meaning for them?
Well, the key for the real estate developers and the general contractors, specifically in Texas, the key is to order, early, right? Give yourself that, 4 months to 5 months process to make sure that you can, get product, even if you have to store it in a warehouse locally and then deliver it either to, the home builder or deliver it to your job site for, a development. The key is ordering early and dealing with a company like mine that has boots on the ground in Asia and that can watch the quality control of the product. We handle the logistics and the importation, but the key is ordering early, really, to make sure you time the schedule, for the construction.
Yeah, one of the things that has been discussed a lot, and it feels like we're increasingly still seeing the impacts of, is basically the breakdown of that just-in-time supplies mentality of there not being a warehouse, not being a back end, because you can always find it on the shelf and it'll be replaced on the shelf immediately. Now, a little bit different in your industry, I'm sure, but it seems like there has been even there a shift from the, you can get it when you need it, to a now this having to pre-plan, which has, cascading impacts. If you're having to worry about your own warehousing space, then you have to worry about getting that space, finding it, staffing, manning that. Everything just gets that much more intense and complicated, it seems like.
I mean, for the developer side of it and GC side of it, this is pretty basic for an average person that's renovating their home. It's a whole different ballgame. I mean, they're ordering furniture online, or even if you walk into a retail store these days, you can get parts and pieces. Maybe you'll get a table, you only get 2 chairs, then you'll wait, 5 or 6 or 9 months for the other 4 chairs or 6 chairs to arrive at your house, because there's no stock. Stock's very depleted, and they have a very short amount of a short list of products that are in the warehouse. So it's a problem.
Yeah, that again sounds like quite the understatement when it comes to all of this. I mean, even beyond the pandemic related issues, there's been just these not quite black swan events, but pretty close to it. It almost seems like I am pretty sure there was a friend here locally waiting on some cabinets to come in for their home renovation that they were like 90% sure it ended up on the Ever Given when it was stuck in the Suez or one of the ships immediately behind it. So we've seen pretty constant disruptions, it feels like.
Yeah, the Suez was a problem, going back, about a year ago. That was a huge issue. But bringing in things into Port of Houston has been pretty smooth, actually. The way that Texas has been running the port, much better. Florida or East Coast ports, you're getting a little bit of a 7 maybe to 14-day delay, but nothing that's as catastrophic as California. You want to avoid California and Long Beach as much as possible. I mean, there's even some of my clients, bringing things in around through the Panama Canal to Houston and then railing it back to California or to Nevada, Arizona to avoid the port. It's a real big issue, and hopefully it gets cleaned up soon. I'm hoping that it'll be settled and smooth by hopefully fourth quarter, of this year.
so that long out. But it also doesn't sound like the way you're describing it, that things are completely log jammed. There are significant delays, obviously, as you mentioned, that 4 to 5 months, but it's not that it's completely unavailable. Is that the sense you're getting at this point of how it ends up working out?
Yeah, it's not completely unavailable. And it's also, you have the Asian New Year happening now. You have certain provinces that have lockdowns. So you've got, added on to that, some factories close anywhere from 15 to 30 days. So, they're finishing up their orders right before January 15th, and they don't get back to work to February 15th. Some factories not until the end of February. So, and that's a nationwide, China, migration, as I call it, living there. I lived there for 7 years. You've never seen anything like it with the amount of people that go home to see their families, because everybody works in factories year round and they all look forward to Chinese New Year to go home. So it's going to be more delays now just because of the Chinese New Year.
All these factors very important. I think I've seen pictures and the stories about a couple of days long tie-ups in traffic. Yeah, it sounds intense at best here. Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Jake Phipps, CEO of Phipps International. Want to find out more about them? phipsandco.com. We got to take that break right now, but coming back out of the break, we're going to be talking more about this and solutions particularly. So stay tuned. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Justin Grieve, your CBS 4 News Update. Homeless shelters in the borderland are getting ready for the freezing conditions. Workers at Mesilla Valley of Hope in Las Cruces went out to buy a surplus of hand and foot warmers along with blankets. The homeless shelters also has extra food and drinks available for families in need. The UTEP minor men's basketball team says they're not taking any chances with the bad weather moving into the borderland. They're now postponed tomorrow night's game at North Texas. The Miners are also currently on a 5-game win streak. A flood prevention project that has been years in the making has once again been delayed. Work was supposed to begin months ago near Mesilla and Brentwood, but now TxDOT and El Paso Water are blaming each other for the project falling apart. CBS 4 On Your Side asked El Paso Water for an interview. They sent us a statement saying TxDOT had the plans for more than 2 years and even repaved the street in the area without doing any drainage work. We asked El Paso Water if they have a new timeline for the project. They have not gotten back to us. With your CBS 4 News Update, I'm Justin Cree.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. Our strong winter storm is going to impact the borderland not only tonight, but in through the next couple of nights with some bitterly cold temperatures. We start off with rain changing over to snow and possibly 1 to 3 inches of snow accumulation with winds as the cold air arrives overnight, gusting to 35 miles an hour. El Paso and Las Cruces, you're under a winter weather advisory starting at 8 p.m. Wednesday and expiring Thursday at 11 a.m.
This report is sponsored by the Texas Department of Transportation. As you drive through Texas, keep in mind that don't mess with Texas actually means don't litter. Keep Texas roads clean and beautiful by holding on to your litter until you can get to a trash can. Always keep a litter-free state of mind and don't mess with Texas. A message brought to you by TxDOT.
Washington politicians are getting richer and richer. A report says Nancy Pelosi could be worth as much as $250 million. And Dr. Fauci just revealed he's worth over $10 million. Not bad for working in public service. If you're tired of the hypocrisy, you need to watch Stinchfield. He's on Newsmax every weekday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and everyone is tuning in. Grant Stinchfield exposes the Washington insiders in his series Hypocrites in America. He even names the hypocrites and reveals their secret agendas. You'll also see Michael Savage and Dick Morris giving their take on Stinchfield. So get Newsmax. It's on every major cable system. If your cable operator doesn't carry Newsmax, tell them you want it. Or watch Newsmax free on your smart TV, like Samsung, Vizio, or LG, and streaming on Pluto, Zumo, Roku, and more. Millions are turning off their old media for Newsmax, a trusted source. Watch Stinchfield tonight and find out why.
Hey guys, it's Edge Martinez. My family's gathering in the kitchen. It's our favorite place to catch up. Keep germs out. I use Lysol on countertops, tables, and the fridge handle. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
Check out the new Our American Stories podcast, the show where the American people are the star, telling inspiring stories of history, sports, business, faith, and love. And and your stories too. Subscribe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the new Our American Stories podcast.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour, and always online at KTSMradio.com. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
From the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk, joined here again from previous segment by Jake Phipps, CEO of Phipps International. Thank you very much for sticking around with us.
How are you guys? Good to see you again.
Absolutely. So we were talking previously about a lot of the logistical issues going on when it comes to the supply chain and just getting stuff shipped around. And so you had mentioned, just as we ended that last segment, about looking at alternate ports of entry, literally getting into different places to get around the California logjam particularly. So is that a viable solution kind of in the long term? Are there the capabilities and the capacity in these, you mentioned about Florida and Texas Gulf Coast, Houston specifically, is that going to be a solution? Because it still sounds pretty complicated because, as you mentioned, some then even training it back to California from there. What is a long-term solution to all of this?
Really, they've got to clean up the federal maritime business. That's, highly underfunded. Is, giving them a I think it's $27 or $28 million budget for all of the containers that come into this country when 25% of our GDP in the whole country relies on imports. We need better funding there, more staff, more structure. And we also need, some port infrastructure and expansion on ports. And then we've got to change some of the rules up, as far as emissions in California for the truckers. Everybody wants to work, to a certain degree. And they're not going to give out free money forever for people to sit at home. So there's got to be some change there that's got to happen. And some of the new, laws that are coming into play should have been pushed into play going back, a year and a half ago. It took them a long time to react to the problem, the federal government.
That certainly seems to be the case. One of the criticisms I've heard more specifically as well is that there has been a move to try to find the way out of the problem, such as saying that containers cannot sit on trucks or in yards for so long, and similar kind of methods that would then result in fines. That seems to kind of be like pushing the string kind of problem as opposed to pulling it, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, there is a lot of problems. Once we do get a container out of the port, specifically in California, it does sit in a yard, and sometimes it takes 5 to 7 days to find a trucker that's willing to pick it up and just move it, 45 minutes up the road to deliver it to a warehouse or to a job site. It's incredible that the process is that difficult. I have full-time staff calling on every trucking company in California, continuous, all day, every day, trying to get truckers to go pick the containers up.
And you mentioned there a bit about the issues going on with it. I understand there's also a tariff on some of the parts that allow for new trucks to be created around there. Is that something that you've encountered?
A tariff on trucks? I haven't really heard much on a tariff on import of goods. Maybe there is. This is something I'm not familiar with. Tariffs on trucks, but they need new trucks if California's not going to accept a truck that's less than 10 years old.
Yeah, that being a part of it, some of the stats we're looking at here that the current administration, 221% tariff on truck chassis imported from China. So that's seeming to, that kind of movement compounding the problem, it kind of sounds like.
Yes, I've heard of the chassis tariff. Okay, I didn't, chassis specifically, that's to carry overweight, bigger trucks, overweight trucks, so they're short on chassis a lot of the time, in California. Or chassis move to another state, go across to another border, and sometimes don't get returned. So it's a problem with chassis.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the just supply of drivers as well is another huge problem of it. Something we've seen a little bit more specific to our area. And again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Jake Phipps, CEO of Phipps International. We want to find out more about them and see what they do and how that relates to our local situation. Phippsandco.com. PHIPPSANDCO.com. So something we've seen a little bit more in our area is that we have our own interesting manufacture, import, export situation within the borderland, is that we have the maquiladora industry with, U.S.-based management, Mexican-based production. And we've seen it was already at pretty high levels pre-pandemic, the ramp up out of the previous recession, essentially. And it took a dip as everything shut down to a certain extent, but then ended up reopening, and we're up at or approaching levels of demand for that, both space, employment, the sheer amount of goods being moved as pre-pandemic at this point, and that is being driven, at least in part, it seems, by companies looking to avoid the issues you're talking about, doing near offshoring, just offshoring, another way to put it, as trying to essentially shorten their supply chain, get around these issues you're doing. That might not be totally possible for you, the way you're talking about your international sourcing of all these things, but in general or in related kind of industries you're familiar with, does that make sense? Is that a current that you might expect to continue as, you're saying you've been told fourth quarter this year, there's still an expectation of serious delays in shipping?
Yeah, I think Mexico is becoming a very large importer into the United States. And there's factories that produce all kinds of goods that aren't far off the border and very close to Laredo, within a 2 to 6 hour drive. And I think there's going to be a really good increase, and it's a pretty good alternative. I've been focused and started producing, some products in Mexico now. So it's a good alternative. For delivery, but they also rely a lot on the parts and components, hardware of certain items that come from China. So depending on what it is, the item that's being produced and how complicated it is, they're having problems also with the raw materials they need to get from the other side of the world. So it's a catch-22, right?
So the real question then for me, it's complicated, and damned if you do, damned if you don't, does seem to be the order of the day. Do these disruptions, in your opinion, from what you've experienced, do they think they will be going on long enough for there to continue being kind of, whether it's to our area or in general, these realignments of how manufacturing and supply chains work to deal with this? Or is this still just kind of, to use the phrase that the Treasury Department no longer likes, transitory, or is this going to be more like interim, long term?
I think manufacturing and consumer consumption, and real estate development, and growth is going to continue. Inflation is going to crush us for quite a while. The federal's got to fix that somehow, and we're going to see. I don't think the issues are going to go away. I think we're going to see a good amount of these raw material issues moving around the world and then getting a product done in here. I'm just hoping that the delays can stop to a certain point. We should be pulling some more manufacturing into the United States, and I know guys are trying, but that's obviously there's need to be a push and more incentive towards setting up shop in domestic U.S. Specifically, Texas in your area would be a great area to have production. So you have access to raw material supplies you can pull from Mexico. Some of it can come from China, some can come locally. And you've got great labor there, to be able to produce, quality goods. But there's got to be incentives for the factory owners.
So when you say incentives there, what kind of packages, what would be suggested to be something that would be effective to get then people to consider changing the manufacturing problem? What would you want to see as a manufacturer in any kind of space to then make that attractive to you? What incentives would work that way?
I think it's a big investment to build a factory and set up production and bring in all the machines and equipment. And now machines and equipment, there's very little factories making heavy duty machinery to produce products. You have to import. Majority of it either comes from Europe or Asia. And so there has to be some really good tax incentives, say, a 10, 15 or 20-year plan, from the government. And I know there is certain structures that are in place, but if they want to push manufacturing domestic, it's got to get a little bit easier and better incentives for the factory owner. to incentivize him to move his production from overseas back here on domestic soil.
So kind of finally, for the average person listening to this today, we've talked a lot about a high level concepts, but for the average person wondering if they might be able to get a house in a new development or get a new apartment, see what might be happening with those prices, what kind of advice would you give them, at least in terms of managing expectations for the next year or two?
I think that Texas, in general, is going to be on a very big growth, over the next 5 years. If any of the red states kind of are really moving, a lot of people moving in. Florida is particularly, the amount of population coming into Florida and Texas. So I think that there's going to be, if you make investments now into real estate, or houses, and you can get houses at the right number, and there's growth in the city and new developments coming, because the population is going into those directions. I think there's growth for the next 5 years, so it's probably a good investment to dive into a house if you can get one at the right price in a good neighborhood and a good school district. School district's the key, right? It's all about the kids.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of important factors to consider. Again, guest right now has been Jake Phipps, CEO of Phipps International. Again, if you want to find out any more about them, what they do, see what we're talking about in their manufacturing experience, phipsandco.com, PHIPPSandco.com. So, Jake, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us about breaking down some of these logistical issues and everything that goes into it and what it means for our average listener here today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. Absolutely. We're going to take that next break right now. Coming out of the break, we will open up those phone lines. The number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound from Artcraft down to Thorne. It's stop-and-go traffic with 7-minute delays in there. On the Gateway 10, both directions, east and westbound from downtown to Trowbridge, you're looking at 5-minute delays, heavy traffic. North Loop Drive, west at Yarborough, injury accident there. Police on scene of a crash at Red and Wrestler, and there's lots of slowing there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Brake Masters.
Have you ever thought that the one thing connecting you between work and family is your car? Brake Masters always thinks this way. It's what we like to call being in BrakeMaster shape. Download coupons at BrakeMasters.com. Then head home safely again.
Brake Masters. We give you an honest break.
Let's face it, credit cards are pretty much a necessity.
New tires for the car? Here's my card.
I order takeout, use my card. And most of us just accept the high interest rates credit cards charge as a necessary evil.
What are you going to do?
Get a low fixed-rate credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream from $5,000 to $100,000 and pay off those credit card balances. Apply online, and you could get your money as soon as the day you apply. The average credit card company charges over 19% APR, but with Lightstream, you can get a fixed rate as low as 4.98% APR with autopay and excellent credit.
Now I can pay off my high-interest credit cards and save money with a much lower rate.
Apply today at lightstream.com/radio and get an additional interest rate discount. That's lightstream.com/radio. Lightstream.com/radio.
Subject to credit approval. Rates range from 4.98% APR to 19.99% APR and include a 0.5% auto pay discount. Lowest rate requires excellent credit. Terms and conditions apply and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/radio for more information.
Take a trip back to Apartment 4D with the crew from the sitcom New Girl and rewatch the series with real-life friends Zooey Deschanel, Hannah Simone, and Lamorne Morris.
We could do a whole episode dedicated to Jake Johnson and his lack of awareness around certain technological things, especially with his phone.
Listen to Welcome to Our Show on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo.
Now may be the perfect time to buy a home financed by Loan Depot. Loan Depot has over 300 loan products to help you make home ownership a reality. Interest rates are near historic lows. Rates will not stay low forever. So call 866-888-LOAN so one of our thousands of loan officers can help you find the right loan. Call 866-888-LOAN or visit loandepot.com. Loan Depot. Rates are subject to change. Equal housing opportunity lender. NMLS number 174457. Licensed in all 50 states.
Check out the new Our American Stories podcast, the show where the American people are the star, telling inspiring stories of history, sports, business, faith, and love, and your stories too. Subscribe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. Any of those places, either of those names, for the most part, you'll be able to find us and chime in. We do have that phone line open now as well, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of people chiming in already here, as again, thanks to our guest from last segment, Jake Phipps of Phipps International, Fips & Co. Looks like they do some good work. Not always present in our area, doesn't seem like, but the perspective on what the heck is going on with international shipping is, well, an increasingly important one to my mind. Again, even outside of this current situation, a lot of stuff probably going to get screwed up by this winter storm here, but we do have Calvin Williams, Leroy Chuck, Michael Patez, and more tuning in and chiming in over there. Calvin Williams saying, what a week. It has been quite an eventful one indeed. So amongst all of those school closures we talked about, the differences across the state line, well, they get highlighted in weird ways sometimes. Most specifically, as reported by our news partners over at KFOX 14, there's not going to be a no school day, no snow day for Las Cruces public schools because they're going to be going virtual. They made the announcement today that students will learn remotely Tuesday instead of delaying or canceling school. That's just an interesting current that comes out of everything that's happened. Then again, a stark example of the differences on the Texas and New Mexico side of thing. I mean, sure, there was the whole remote learning thing that happened, 2020, really only within that year, but Texas has no mechanism that has been allowed to continue on in any case, no emergency orders that were coming out of the Department of Public Education for Texas or the governor's office to allow for that to continue, but in New Mexico, it has. So if I was still in school, I would probably be very unhappy about that, just personally. I feel like I was getting robbed, but I can imagine that maybe for parents and others, well, I'll be very curious to know what parents think. If anyone is up there in Cruces, what they have to think, because, I mean, if they can still be at work virtually, I guess it could work, but just, again, a stark example. Otherwise, we are still looking down that long list of otherwise Texas area schools, the Anthony School District, El Paso, Socorro, Isleta independent school districts, all announcing that they will be closed tomorrow in advance of the winter storm. So a lot of stuff shutting down. We also have warming centers now being set up in El Paso and Las Cruces. So just stay safe out there. This one is going to be the winter that we haven't really gotten all year. Sure, it's been a little bit cold outside, but we've barely dipped into freezing much this year as it is, and we're getting all of it at once, it kind of feels like. City of El Paso has announced that it has been doing those road efforts in order to keep the roads prepped as much as possible. There was a comment earlier, Leroy Chuck, saying that in a desert, the infrastructure isn't set up for snow or ice, no snowplows, minimal four-wheel drive, no salt sand on roads, and nobody knows how to drive slow. I'll agree with you on part of that, particularly that last part. I feel like anytime I go on I-10 and I'm going at or even maybe slightly below 60, that you get viewed more like a speed bump than another car on the road. Maybe that's just me. I tend not to do that because of those circumstances, but it ends up being a fast track out there. But El City of El Paso does have some facilities out there. It's not, I mean, if we had a whole fleet of snowplows out there, I'm sure someone else would be saying, why the hell do we have snowplows? Can't we figure it out? But I mean, there was some street maintenance. They were doing some of the road treatment, not so much sand and salt that they do. I mean, that's the reason cars last as long as they do down here. More likely to have the sun bleaching through the roof than eaten up underneath like you do get up north. But they were doing some of the spraying. Again, those 5 parallel lines you might be seeing, particularly on overpasses and on major connections on and off I-10 particularly. That is some of the preparation that goes on. Now, overpasses, given they protracted freeze. We are looking at, again, estimates I've seen put it upwards of maybe 60 hours straight of below or just at freezing temperatures. And with temperatures getting down to at or near actual zero, it's gonna be cold. So anything that could freeze is gonna. So I wouldn't say to take any chances on the overpasses, even with those preparations going on. There are some things that can go on. Kevin Williams saying I was going to drive to Indiana, but the weather had some input and changed things for me. Again, I have someone that I know driving in from San Antonio to be here for a while, and good luck and Godspeed to them in making their way here. A little bit salty to them for having dragged the weather for themselves back here. Michael Pata is giving the advice: run your taps so your pipes don't freeze. Remember that is only inside. Don't leave your outside taps dripping because they will freeze. And the other point to remember is that leaving the taps dripping so they don't freeze only works if the air in the house is also not freezing. So make sure you got your heat up. And if you're ever worried about some of your taps also getting a little bit too cold, you can even open up the cabinet under it. If you can, if there's not stuff down there that needs to be locked away from pets or little ones, etc., just to keep the air warm enough for them would be another way. Again, not quite like 2011 when there was that more or less solid a week of freeze, but we're going to be in for it. By all estimates, it does sound like. We're not just going to be talking about the weather here today. We got the shutdowns and the further impacts, including those election implications for how the rest of Texas does with this upcoming storm to talk about. So we're due for that break here at the top of the hour. Coming back, we will get to more of the calls, more of the comments, more of all that on the line. So if you're wanting to call in, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound's been slow most of the afternoon. It continues to be heavy with 7 to 10 minute delays. Artcraft down to Thorn and eastbound I-10. Gateway 10 is heavy with 5 to 10 minute delays downtown to Trowbridge, both directions. Watch for an injury accident Gateway Boulevard eastbound at Yarborough, and an injury accident George Dieter at Bob Mitchell with police and EMS on the scene. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Being a real estate agent isn't about listing houses. It's about connecting to people. I need to find new buyers every day, so I promote my listings using radio commercials from iHeartAdBuilder.com. Now, every time I have an open house, it's a full house.
A custom radio ad from iHeartAdBuilder is the fast, affordable way to drive customers to your business. Put the power of radio to work for you. Get started now at iHeartAdBuilder.com.
Mass Mutual knows that your finances can be an uncomfortable conversation.
Mark, we should really talk about our money.
Yep, we really should.
Like we never talk about our savings.
No, we never talk about that. Or our assets.
Or our debt.
Yeah, we really should talk about our debt.
We need one of those financial plans.
One of those will make a difference.
We should talk about it.
We really should.
Talk to us about financial wellness today. Feel comfortable about tomorrow. Mass Mutual. Live Mutual.
We all have our favorite podcasts. We listen day and night. Now, iHeartRadio is celebrating the best in podcasting. Our 2022 iHeartRadio Podcast Awards are coming tomorrow. Join Will Ferrell, Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey, Bowen Yang, Martha Stewart, Paris Hilton, Bethany Frankel, Wilmer Valderrama, and many more as we honor the brilliant storytelling and inspiring conversations behind the podcasting explosion. So wonderful. Watch live exclusively on iHeartRadio's YouTube channel and Facebook page, and listen on iHeartRadio tomorrow night at 9.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert.
Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Why should you volunteer with Meals on Wheels?
I never thought that 5 minutes could make so much difference in the lives of two people, but it has.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
News on the hour and the half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The winter weather hitting parts of the U.S. is causing flight cancellations to pile up. FlightAware reports over 2,100 flights have been canceled within, into, or out of the U.S. New COVID cases and hospitalizations are headed downhill, but deaths are still on the rise. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky said the U.S. hospital system has been stretched to its limit. However, White House COVID advisor Jeff Zients praised expected authorization of Pfizer's COVID vaccine for kids under 5 years old.
18 million children under the age of 5 will become eligible.
The leader of the far-right militia group Oath Keepers will await trial in a Washington, D.C. jail. A federal district judge denied Stuart Rhodes' motion asking to remain in a Texas prison to be closer to his attorneys. The judge said the court wouldn't involve itself in decisions of location, leaving it up to the U.S. Marshals Service and Bureau of Prisons. Police say the shooting that left one student dead and another in critical condition in Minnesota was not random. The incident happened outside the South Education Center in Richfield, south of Minneapolis. The Richfield police chief said the altercation was possibly related to a previous dispute. 4 men are under arrest in connection with the overdose death of actor Michael K. Williams last September. Lisa G. reports.
The Manhattan U.S. Attorney said his office is making a priority of holding fentanyl and heroin dealers responsible in overdose deaths.
This is a public health crisis, and it has got to stop.
Investigators say 39-year-old Irvin Cartagena, along with the 3 other men, are now charged with running the heroin ring near Williams' Brooklyn apartment. Authorities say the drug ring continued to sell the narcotics in broad daylight at apartment buildings in Brooklyn and Manhattan.
You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The start of the sentencing trial for Florida school shooter Nicholas Cruz is being delayed.
The trial was set to begin later this month, but it's now being pushed back until at least April. Both the prosecution and defense have asked for more time to prepare. Cruz pleaded guilty last year to 17 murders and 17 attempted murders at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland nearly 4 years ago. Jurors will be asked to decide if Cruz receives the death penalty or life in prison. I'm Rick Hoschel.
A jury is finding neither former Alabama Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore nor the woman who accused him of sexual assault when she was a minor had defamed each other. Lake Horfman alleged that in 1979, a 32-year-old Moore initiated a sexual encounter when she was 14. In 2018, she filed a lawsuit against Moore, claiming he defamed her when he denied her accusations. Moore countersued, saying Horfman's claims were slanderous. Friends, family, and fellow police officers are saying final goodbyes to a fallen NYPD officer. Scott Pringle reports from St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Mayor Eric Adams says Wilbert Mora was a dedicated public servant and an exceptional young man.
Let us pray for Officer Mora and for his family and friends. Their pain is our pain.
The 27-year-old was taken off life support after getting shot, responding to a call in Harlem last month. NYPD Inspector Amir Yakatali says his last act of heroism was being an organ donor.
He's given the greatest gift of all, life. Because of Wilbert, 5 strangers have been given the continuation of life.
Mora's partner, Jason Rivera, was also killed during the same call.
A Colorado firefighter is being applauded for rescuing a dog on a literal goose chase. The golden retriever was running after a goose when he became stuck in an ice-covered pond. The firefighter jumped into the freezing water and hoisted the dog onto solid ice. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Family. That's family. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by the new Our American Stories podcast.
Check out the new Our American Stories podcast, the show where the American people are the star, telling inspiring stories of history, sports, business, faith, and love, and your stories too. Subscribe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, Phil Swift here for the Flex Seal family of products. You know, there's a lot of ways to protect your home. You could dig a moat. You could bubble wrap it. Or you could train a pack of wolves to protect it. But the best way is with the Flex Seal family of products. So when you need to patch, bond, seal, repair, and stop leaks fast, get the Flex Seal family of products. Available at flexsealproducts.com and fine retailers.
El Paso's love for baseball can be traced back to the first baseball team, the El Paso Browns, organized in 1892. And over the years, the team name would change several times. In 1926, El Paso's baseball team, then the El Paso Giants, runs into trouble when they move from the Frontier League to the Copper League. The Copper League was known as the Outlaw League, since many teams and players were often expelled from organized baseball for consorting with gamblers, loose women, and rabble-rousers. Though El Paso's Giants weren't outlaws, El Paso's reputation for gambling and sporting houses just might have been a contributing factor in a player's bad behavior.
The El Paso History Show with Jackson Polk and Melissa Sargent is sponsored by Patrick Tuttle Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate, Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant in Cañutillo, Mission Del Rey Southwest for gifts and decor, Keystone Heritage Park, and Monterey Asset Management. It's the El Paso History Show, Saturday morning at 10, streaming live on Facebook and on News Radio 690.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for joining us, however you may be doing, so be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. One of the better ways you can get at us throughout the show by leaving your comments over there. The Skeptic Squad definitely up and at 'em today with Michael Pattas, Leroy Chuck, Calvin Williams, and more tuning in and chiming in over there. Leroy Chuck planning to do donuts on his street with his truck tomorrow. Where do you live and how can I not be there? Michael Pattas adding a little bit more somberly, maybe. It's going to be fun to see all the accidents here. Again, drive safe. It is going to be an interesting day tomorrow. The list of organizations, government agencies, and school districts cutting it down and saying already just we're not doing it is continuing to expand here. Kim Williams also mentioning to disconnect those garden hoses. Very good idea. Again, the 4 Ps, people, plants, pipes, pets. Take care of all of those as we're looking at a protracted period of sub-freezing and potentially sub-zero weather for a part of it through the end of this week. So we are taking those calls now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Just going down the schools here right now. Again, Las Cruces Public Schools and other New Mexico school districts, including Gadsden, not in person, but still doing virtual education as of tomorrow. So I would just feel so gypped if I was still as a kid like those, still just weaseled out of that time that I could have had. I'd be mad. But El Paso Catholic Schools, Loretto Academy, UT El Paso, Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center, delayed opening, but the rest of those closed. El Paso Community College operating remotely, EPISD, YISD, SISD, Cañutillo Independent School District, Fabin, San Elizario, Anthony, Harmony Public Schools, Idea Public Schools, all of those closed. Clint, oddly enough, operating on a normal schedule as of now. This list may be updated for the latest. You want to see it for yourself, you can see it over from our news partners at KFOX14, KFOXTV.com. They will be having it all. Calvin Williams saying, just wait till this is all over. I'll be overkill and everyone is going to keep overreacting. Again, if it snows and sticks almost at all, there's not really a difference to how people are going to react here as if there were. No, if it all blows over, nothing sticks in the ground, no ice, nothing. I will count us lucky, but that's when I expect people to say, oh man, it wasn't that bad. If it's going to be like 1 inch of snow, I'll only expect those that came here from the north to be like, it wasn't that bad. If we get those 3 inches we expect, any amount of snow on the ground is really going to be enough to make people around here probably freak out a little bit. So just take care, be calm. Maybe don't do donuts in your yard or the street or anywhere because you might end up in the yard from the street, frankly. But just stay safe and be calm out there. Don't go out, buy all the toilet paper, buy all the bread, buy all the milk. You're not going to need that much. Frankly, if your cupboard is bare right now, you have other issues to consider. Just be calm. We'll get through this together. Or not, as the case may be. But we are taking those calls now. As I mentioned, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Leroy Chuck as I said it, better get some toilet paper and milk before it gets sold out. Saw a great rendition of a Renaissance era painting of snow forecasts, and it was a still life of a milk jug, a loaf of bread, and also some wine. So don't forget that. If you're really going to go out and panic buy, why not go all out for it here? So yeah, all of that. Anyway, phone calls 915-544-587654 KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeast in the line here with us right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. So the kinks in the supply chain are due to the pandemic, and it's infecting workers. So this depressed the supply of labor and goods, leading to increases in prices, inflation. And so President Biden is not responsible for these problems in the private free enterprise system and market. Now, on July 15 of 1971, Republican President Richard Nixon announced on live television that he would visit the People's Republic in China the following year. Nixon and another Republican disastrous presidency delivered to America's plutocrats and their manufacturing corporations and stuck it to the unions and America's workers by opening the door to communist China. And that's what capitalists do. They lower the highest cost of a business, which is labor. Their goal is to replace human labor with machines and technology. And when they can't do that, then they look for the cheapest labor. And so now they since then they were able to go all over the world, and find the cheapest labor. Didn't matter if they were dictatorships or anything, or autocracies or dictatorships there in these countries. Didn't matter. Didn't matter if those people had human rights or not. As long as we could make our stuff cheap, that's all that really mattered. And so actually a lot more jobs have been lost, by the way, to automation that had been shipped abroad. That's also another important point. My first job after I graduated from college was with Texas Instruments in Dallas, Texas. And I saw engineers invent machines that eliminated hundreds of workers at a time. And they had just started to manufacture some of their products in China and then on to Mexico. And the political party of these manufacturers and capitalists and plutocrats has always been the Republican Party. They're the party of corporate America. And Donald Trump and his grifter daughter have been having their clothing lines made in China for years.
Okay, sure. There has been a lot of effort to offshore things, but to call it only one party or the other here is frankly missing the point, I think, because there's been more than a little bit money made by everyone on every side of the aisle. I mean, there's the whole corporate Democrat wing to consider about when you're talking about national politics that has been more or less supportive of that kind of a move. Now, of course, President Biden has trying to do some courting of the whole union vote, but just to your initial assertion there about, okay, well, there has been a lot that has been caused by the pandemic. Certainly, I don't think much is being disputed about that by the pandemic and the restrictions that come along with it, but you really don't think that there's anything this administration could do to focus on it? And even beyond that, if they're just throwing up their hands saying, well, it is what it is, you don't think that's going to have any electoral implications?
Obviously. I mean, the president always gets blamed for all the bad stuff that happened during his tenure, whether he caused it or not, or whether the other side blamed him for something that he had couldn't do anything about it. There are so many things that are made in China. We are so dependent on them now. They are also our largest foreign buyer of government bonds. And Donald Trump didn't do anything to change this other than imposing tariffs on them and lying that the tariffs were being paid by the Chinese, when in fact those tariffs were paid by American consumers with higher prices to collect those tariffs.
I mean, sure, that's how tariffs do work, but it has also resulted in essentially a protracted amount of economic warfare being going on between the U.S. and China, because these were not unilateral moves. These were either precipitated or pretty quickly reciprocated by the Chinese government to do similar kind of things. Why do you think, among other things, look right around town, the whole recycling push that the city of El Paso is focusing on is because China in general and by policy has, amongst other things, basically stopped buying recycling, the recycling that was being put out, such as locally or even in other localities throughout the country, because, well, there were issues with the supply of it, don't get me wrong, but you didn't even see that much of a focus on it ahead of this start of that. Again, economic warfare is the best way I can think to describe it, because of all of what has gone into it, the specific targeting in some cases. I mean, there's been discussions about specific tariffs put on even specific alcohols to target, such as Mitch McConnell in his district and the alcohols that are purchased there. So it has become its own, not a Cold War would be way overwrought to talk about this, but an economic war, absolutely, that really hope doesn't turn into a shooting war. But the year is young. We got lots of time for things to move forward here. But to say that, again, all of this is just a little bit funny to me when you say that one administration gets blamed for everything bad that happens to it, whether it deserves it or not. That just is a little bit humorous to me. All right, we're due for that next break right now. We're going to be getting to more of those calls coming out of the break. We do have those phone lines open. That number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Still slow for rush hour on most of your major freeways, including the I-10 southbound between Artcraft and Thorne. It's stop and go there. Edgemere Boulevard, west of Loop 375, Joe Battle, got an injury accident there. Another injury accident, Mesa Street at Brentwood, and Montana Avenue, west of Airway at Sioux Drive. An injury accident there, slowing traffic. Harry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Win $1,000.
No way. No way. No way.
Oh, baby. Yes way.
No way.
It's a grand in your hand. Listen every hour from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win.
A grand in your hand is brought to you by Approved Autos. Drive out in your new ride in less than an hour. Choose from every make and model from their super clean, hand-picked inventory and get payments as low as $159 a month. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. If you got your license and you got a job, they smell the deal. The deals are sweeter at Approved Autos, 8498 Alameda.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. Hiring is hard. Luckily, there's Indeed. The hiring platform makes it easy to attract, screen, and interview candidates from the same place. Just sponsor a job. You'll immediately get a short list of quality candidates on Indeed. Visit Indeed.com/credit to get started.
Mike Capel here, serial entrepreneur with words from another happy payroll customer.
My accountant recommended we switch. We did. I was terrified, but Patriot is so easy to use and they do it right. Now we keep our accountant super happy and I don't have to spend a lot of time on my employees and my payroll and my taxes. I can actually get back to work.
With PatriotSoftware.com, accounting and payroll, keep your time and money.
Ben and Ashley I, Almost Famous, is the Bachelor Recap podcast you can't miss. Breaking down every episode from Bachelor Nation.
Clayton begs for her to stay. That's a nuts response.
Yeah.
so that absolutely
fantastic.
That absolutely tells me that this will be an awesome season. And
I agree.
Listen to Ben and Ashley I, Almost Famous, on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways you can participate in the show. We do have those phone lines open full up at the moment, but if you want to try to call in a little bit later, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Weather on the mind here. No, we are not turning into a weather station, but just be safe out there. Don't go out and panic buy all of the bread and milk. You'll be fine. Just be safe. And pretty much every school district, except for, as long as the list is updated here, checking with our news partners over at KFOX, Clint apparently going forward with their normal schedule on the Texas side of things. And then in New Mexico, Gadsden and Las Cruces Public Schools going remote for Thursday. So not in person, not in the go anywhere, but class is still happening remotely, which just is, I feel for the kids out there that were expecting a snow day. No, the death of snow days. That's a headline for you. But just part of what we're talking about here are taking those calls. So if you wanted to call in, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. We have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon. Not only is the pandemic responsible for this supply chain crisis and, the lack of people in the labor force, but I think another thing that Raul character has not mentioned is, one, Biden closing down the Keystone Pipeline. Number two, planning on closing down another pipeline. And number three, raising the fees for exploring and drilling on federally owned lands. And then having to go beg OPEC and Vladimir Putin to lower oil prices. So that all adds up. And besides that, not only do prices for products go up, take a look at your homeowner's insurance, folks, and see if your premiums haven't gone up this next month. Might not be a surprise to most, but it was to me. Mine went up quite a bit. Anyway, have a good evening, and you all take care out there.
Yeah, you too as well. Drive safe as you're going in and around. Hadn't thought about the homeowners insurance, but I mean, that whole skimpflation that we talked about, I love that phrase because it's so weird and yet descriptive of a particular phenomenon we're seeing, but that not part of it. Clearly, that just regular inflation and increasing cost. Fun stuff for sure. A lot of comments coming in here. We got Stephen Purdy, Ion Grimm, Michael Pettis, James Radcliffe, Calvin Williams, Leroy Chuck, and more. A lot of response going on there to that. If you want to check it out, that the Skeptic Squad lives firmly over on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Talk El Paso. But you're able to go check that out throughout our show here. Next up on the line, we do have Barbara on the west side here with us. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call. Well, here I am again defending myself. Raul gave me a shout out yesterday, so I wanted to respond to it, and he was ridiculing President Trump for not having taken care of the opioid addiction problem, nor the fentanyl. I'm beginning to think that Raul is really disappointed or getting depressed that President Trump didn't walk on water. And he's correct. President Trump didn't take care of these things. But in 2020, and this is according to CNN, the federal statistics stated that for the first time in 28 years, drug overdoses had decreased. And also stated that life expectancy in the United States in 2018, for the first time in 4 years, had increased. So President Trump was making a difference. Not only that, President Trump did not have any problem calling out, like I said yesterday to another caller, Xi, and telling him to stop the fentanyl. He also wasn't shy about calling out pharma and telling them about their opioids, that they need to stop just prescribing and going out and prescribing these drugs to the patients, telling the doctors, going out to the doctors with their agents and promoting their drugs. So those are some of the things that President Trump did get accomplished, and we're lucky that he accomplished as much as he did under his administration, based on the fact that he was always fighting. I mean, every time he took a breath, Congress found something else to investigate him through. So we were fortunate that we had a businessman who knew what he was doing, that wasn't a political person. And one of the things that I admire is he learned what he learned. You've heard that phrase, school of hard knocks. Well, that's how he did his administration. He did the school of hard knocks, and he learned a lot. And when he runs in 2024, maybe he'll finish what he started, and, we'll get back on track. So that's my view of what President Trump did and Raul's comments. And on the supply chain, President Biden is partially to blame for that. He's imposing mandates. He has vaccine against vaccinated. The truckers have they have to get vaccinated or they lose their job. I mean, who does that in a terrible economy with a virus that we have to learn how to live with? And now new reports are coming out on the vaccine that I'm just getting into. But he is the problem.
Again, the buck stops here is a very persuasive line of reasoning in my mind about, whatever the problem is, what are you doing about it? Just throwing up hands and saying, well, there's nothing we can do. That's the kind of stuff that gets you out of office pretty quickly, in my estimation. Now, I'm not the average voter with the way I think about things, clearly, but still, I've got to imagine more than a few people out there think that, well, yeah, if you're saying you can't do anything, maybe we should get someone who can, if that's really the line of reasoning being used.
Absolutely.
Yeah, anyway, maybe that's just me, but do appreciate the point and the call. You stay safe out there.
Thank you, Andrew.
And something we got coming up for you, by the way, in the works here is going to be talking with a Canadian trucker or a Canada, US, and Mexico trucking company that operates in all of those spaces, and what they're seeing, particularly on that whole Canada caravan to Ottawa that's been going on, which has been a little bit hard to get a handle on. We're going to be getting into that here later in this week, probably up for you tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. But I mean, the logistics issues, every system has its stress points. Every system has its points of failure or where things are just going to go wrong. And if you're not choosing those points or actively analyzing them, you then don't have any control over them. It sounds weird of an idea to say, well, okay, what do we want as the stress point or the failure point? But really, if you're not managing or at least being aware of it, then you're just going to fall victim to it. And it feels like we've been doing more than a little bit of that. And again, the phrase I used, think about just taking like a literal piece of string, putting it on the table. How do you move it? If you pull it, it'll come with you. If you try to push the string, it just clumps up and gets even more tangled up, frankly. And it feels like a lot of efforts have been trying to push the string when it says, oh, well, we'll find you out of the way of it, and then you'll totally do it. It just, that ain't even a little bit how it works. So anyone who says that, there's just nothing can be done, get over it. That is not how this works at all. Anyway, more calls on the line, 915-544-5876-544 KTSM. Do have Joe on the west side here with us. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. Hey, one of the great things about your show, Andrew, is that you have very smart people that call in and help educate the ignorant. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about, this guy that called in doesn't know what he's talking about. This guy, the first guy that called in and was talking about Nixon and China, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Back then, when Nixon, he was trying to do a good thing, because back then we were looking at war with China. I don't know if you know this. I was in Asia at that particular time, and I know because I was a soldier back then, and they were telling us that we might go to war with China. Now, the thing about it is that what Nixon was trying to do, like I said, he was trying to do a good thing. He was trying to bring China into the nations of this world. He was trying to make him one of the nations that needed to be respected, and they respect everybody else. But what happened was the Democrats get involved and they screw up everything. The Democrats started taking bribes, they started taking money, they started getting involved with the Chinese in bad ways, like Bill Clinton. You've heard the term honeypot and concubine? Sorry. Mm-hmm. Concubine means you serve. Honeypot, you know what a honeypot means? You get involved in sex with somebody. When Clinton was visiting China, he got involved in that. They photographed him and the other guy, Richardson, having sex with these prostitutes. And then they had him concubined. He was a server of China. And he did. He gave China a lot of things. A lot of our secrets, a lot of technology, because they had him trapped. And then, now, look at this. You have Biden, who's also taking a lot of money from China. You have Feinstein, who's taking a lot of money from China. And not only that, you have Pelosi, that's taking a lot of money. And, of course, Hunter. Hunter, I mean, you can't even talk about that guy. He's so despicable. But the fact of the matter is that there was a good intent on the part of Nixon, and there was nothing wrong with it. We were trading with China, and it was going well. But the fact of the matter is that you get a lot of politicians that are totally crooked, like a lot of the Democrats, and then they want to get very wealthy right away. So that's what messes up everything, is you get this crooked Democrats involved in something, and China sees that, and they say, hey, let's take advantage of this. But, that's all I wanted to say.
I think those are important points you bring up. It's not even, there's a lot of influence that the government of China tries to implement, clearly over their own people. The whole Great Firewall of China is an insane development of the modern world. But it's not something that happens in a vacuum either. This is not just something they do on their own and just even force everyone to deal with. Think about the amount of companies that have now chosen to deal with mainland China and have had to make concessions to ostensibly their values in order to do so. You can't name a tech company that has not done so, and more than a few entertainment companies. Basically any movie that is made these days has an eye towards then the Chinese market and what that's going to mean. And you've seen it in certain small ways, such as, more, Chinese movie stars showing up in otherwise Western movies. Don't have exactly an issue with that. But then when certain things are not allowed to be shown, such as, well, most specifically to talk about Marvel within the Avengers movies, and very specifically Doctor Strange, there's a character known as the Ancient One who was supposed to be Tibetan, and that, I think it was the actress Tilda Swinton, was very much not Tibetan, because that is a incredibly unallowed topic to be talked about when anywhere that the government of China has influence. And it does go further than that. The whole Confucius Institute things, the amount of effort and influence trying to be exerted is significant. So even beyond the economic warfare we've talked about, there's essentially been, I don't go quite as far to say a cultural warfare, but you can kind of see it from here with how and what China is trying to do with the sphere of influence everywhere outside of its own borders. But that's a whole nother subject and a whole nother topic to get into. And one of the many reasons I'm probably never going to be able to visit China. Well, got to talk about the truth. Getting back to more of that after this break here. So thanks for the point in the call. Due for that next one. Coming out of the break, we'll get to more of those calls on the line. That number to do so, 915-544-5876-544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. The borderland is bracing for several days of severe weather. Rain is set to start tonight with possible snow accumulation on Thursday morning. The city of El Paso has opened warming centers in preparation for the freezing temperatures. Also, TxDOT is planning to prepare roads with sand in anticipation of black ice forming on roadways. The Isleta School District and the El Paso School District have announced that they are canceling classes for Thursday. El Paso City Council approved a new Sun Metro bus route to the new William Beaumont Medical Center. In the months since the William Beaumont Army Medical Center has opened, there has not been public transportation to and from the hospital. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Gateway Boulevard eastbound at North Yarborough. Watch for a crash there that's blocking the 3 right lanes. Expect delays. Stop and go traffic on the I-10 eastbound after Artcraft. Injury accident, Edgemere Boulevard, just west of Loop 375 Joe Battle. Another injury accident, Alameda at Brentwood. Harry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. Our strong winter storm is going to impact the borderland not only tonight, but in through the next couple of nights with some bitterly cold temperatures. We start off with rain changing over to snow and possibly 1 to 3 inches of snow accumulation with winds as the cold air arrives overnight, gusting to 35 miles an hour. El Paso and Las Cruces, you're under a winter weather advisory starting at 8 p.m. Wednesday and expiring Thursday at 11 a.m.
This report is sponsored by the new Our American Stories podcast.
Check out the new Our American Stories podcast, the show where the American people are the star.
telling inspiring stories of history, sports, business, faith, and love, and your stories too. Subscribe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
First, we decide where we want to go. Then we need to know the best way to get there. Hi, my name's Adam Barata. I'm the owner of Advantage Gold. We're the highest rated precious metals firm in the country. We teach people how to own physical gold and silver. Now, we've won the Best of TrustLink Award 4 years in a row because we educate our clients on how to buy gold and silver the right way. We don't pay celebrity spokespeople millions of dollars. We'd rather pass that value on to you. Call 800-900-8000 and speak with one of our experts. We'll send you a free gold kit along with my latest #1 national best-selling book, The Great Devaluation. Call 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000. Get the best information, the best process, the best service, the best value. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000.
I love when my friends stop by, but to help keep my friends and my family safe, I always spray Lysol in my home before guests arrive and again after they leave. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
Make this the winter of you with Audible. Listen to the best of what you love, from comedy to wellness to the latest bestsellers. Find it all at Audible with audiobooks, exclusive originals, and popular podcasts. Start listening free when you sign up at audible.com. This report is sponsored by Audible.
Weather and traffic info. You need it? We have it. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed. News Radio 690 KTSM.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to participate in the show, including Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. If you want to comment over there, just tune in, chime in on those, as we have a lot of people doing so. Stephen Purdy, Ion Graham, Michael Perez, James Radcliffe, Calvin Williams, Leroy Chuck, and more. Stephen M. Purdy with an interesting comment here that people weren't even talking about the problem of everything being manufactured in China before Donald Trump made it a major campaign issue. I'm not sure about that part if no one was talking about it, but he certainly seized on it as a major campaign issue. I'll agree with you on that aspect. But I want to say and his point was that since they are a top-down communist country who manipulates their currency, they don't play by the rules of the free market economics. This is why it was reasonable to slap tariffs on their products to try and make U.S. manufacturing competitive. I mean, there was a certain amount of reasonableness. I mean, international trade is an odd beast once you start getting into it, and it has resulted in more or less a trade war that has come along with it that's been continuing apace. Do not mistake it. That's part of the tariffs we're talking about. But at a certain point, you got to weigh your principles against reality, both in terms of what are you dealing with and then pandemic response, getting the economy back going. There are no simple issues when it comes to anything international, just plain flat out in my mind. But we'll get into more of those calls right now. Again, the way to do that, if you're wanting to chime in that way, 915-544-5876. 544 KTSM. I mean, yeah, there's not going to be, anytime I hear China, I can't help but hear that phrase in the back of my head, China. Like, it's going to live there rent free for the rest of my life. I've just accepted that at this point. But again, calls 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. We do have Jerry in northwest side of town here with us right now. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Andrew. This is not a dig on Barbara, so don't take it that way, Barbara. But
Okay.
If Trump did walk on water, they would put out a headline that he doesn't know how to swim. So,
yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to try to give out a few tips. I lived in Colorado for a long time for people. One easy way to keep your windshield clean and unfroze is to put a piece of plastic over it, even if you have to take clean wrap. And take it out there and stretch it across your window, something that will not freeze to the window.
Mm-hmm.
That way, early in the morning, all you got to do is take it off and it's clean of frost or snow. Okay, that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is if you have outside faucets with faucet pipes that stick up, a drop light out there is real easy to put on it right by the base and turn it on. It's easier to pay for $2 or $3 worth of electricity than to have to pay a $200 replacement of your faucet. So that's another one. And also with your pets, please bring them in, even if you have to take them into a garage or whatever, because it's hard on them. They don't live as long if they're out in the weather, and they get sick a lot easier. And that's all I got to say.
Oh, no, those are important things. I appreciate for the point and the call there. Again, we've got some people from out of town, from climes northern, but it's an important thing to remember to take appropriate precautions. I do the whole plastic bag, rags around the base, and then another plastic bag on the outside for it. I've got pipes that stick out just a little bit too far for those nice uniform styrofoam covers that go over the spigots out there. So that's what I run with. Don't have any of the ones sticking up out of the ground, but that sounds like a decent tip as well. So just keep it safe and take appropriate precautions. It'll really start hitting tonight is what we keep hearing. And be safe out on the roads, particularly here. John Brazelton with an interesting comment saying that he visited China for 2 weeks in 2005. Nice visit, saw the Great Wall, the clay soldiers, and did a 3-day trip down the main river. You can still buy items with Chinese cash or credits card then no longer. Interesting perspective there. I mean, I've like the idea of visiting there, just given how much I'm on the record unhappy with the ruling party and government there. I doubt I'll ever be able to go there. Leroy Chuck expressing his, I believe, appreciation for those El Paso life tips for bad weather, but also saying just some pretty good advice here. Don't freak out. Stay home until it's better out, and don't freak out. Good advice for life in general. We'll see how well this works out for us tomorrow. Again, most school districts shutting down or doing non-in-person. Again, for those kids in New Mexico, I just kind of feel for them. Getting not able to have a school snow day from school, virtual instead. Oh, that just kind of hits me at my core. Anyway, getting more calls on the line, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. To have Johnny in the Northeast here with us. Johnny, thanks for joining us.
Yes, good afternoon. I hope all is going well for you guys over there. I just want to comment on this. Some of these people are fishing with this guy named Raul. I haven't heard all of Raul's comments. I'm guessing he must get in on the first hour or something like that. But these people take it personal. What is the obsession with picking on him? Could you tell me before I get into my comments, please?
Sure thing. I mean, Raul is one of our more frequent flyers. I will freely admit here. We do have an open phone line. We put it out as such, and as much as I like the idea of that, sometimes it's just the intractableness of it. Particularly, I mean, one of our earlier commenters said it pretty well as well, given the constant, and sometimes we have chosen to skip it because of lack of anything new commentary on the former president. And then the comment at the end of it is today, I guess it's sometimes a lack of self-awareness about the statements being made, given prejudices that do seem heavily ingrained, to put it way too high level. I think it basically comes down to that, sure, there are some people that aren't happy with the way that he talks about the former president, but I find myself most frustrated personally when that's all that's talked about. I hope against hope that all of our callers and commentators will make some interesting points that we can have an interesting and robust discussion about. But when it is the same thing over and over again, sometimes we decide we're just not going to do that day. But your mileage may vary depending on each individual person and their response to it. I'll say that.
Yeah, well, the name dropping part too. I've been, listening to talk radio shows all over the years, even here on El Paso. I think I mentioned to you earlier back in Strelson's days and Leon Metz and so forth and all of them. And, they were very, respectful. But these guys, right away, they dropped this man's name. And I just think something is wrong about that. But let me get into my point real quick, since it seems like these people champion the former president. I always talk about, you might have heard me say it, and I keep on saying it until I can't say it anymore, about how we were affected a couple of years ago over at the Walmart, losing those 23 people.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I talk about it so much, I have a personal friend who did lose someone in that particular incident, and I've been trying to get, and he still right now is grieving over this, and I even tell him, I wish you would go on the show, this new show that Andrew Polk has, and just voice yourself and your family's concern. And the reason I'm saying this because these people who are championing the former president seem like they have a short memory, and I don't care either way, Biden or Trump or whoever, and I don't like how they be talking about their children and talking about Hunter Biden and Trump Jr. and all of them. That's just it just seems like that's beneath them. And the young man that's downtown in our jail right now who killed those people, I would bet my life and everything I own that he would have never came here to kill those people at the Walmart if that president that was in office at the time had not instigated it. And the same thing about the thing on January 6th. It seems like these people just have short memory. They don't realize what this guy did to our country. And I don't care if it had been Trump or anybody. I don't care who it was. This guy hurt our country. But some of these people that's been calling you seems to have they just look the other way on it. And this bothers me. It really does.
I can understand your concern with it, but here's my perspective on it. What I got to say is that, sure, the former president had some very controversial points that he brought up. Some people were happy about that. Some were unhappy, but I find it difficult myself to draw then a direct line between any sentiment, frankly, expressed by him and then things that would happen on particularly August 3rd within our community, because that was not someone hearing a statement, getting riled up about it and deciding to just go and do. That was a planned out event. I mean, everything that has come out so far, we are still waiting for the day in court of that, obviously. But I mean, everything that I understand and what the information that has come out is that this person drove across the state with a plan in mind. That is not exactly a hyped up individual, someone who was just in the heat of the moment and deciding, yeah, this is the right thing to do, or yeah, this will be so awesome, and going to do it. This was a methodical plan. And even the videos that I've seen that have been attributed to the actual arrest of that person, the now indicted killer from that attack that happened on our community, was something that was not exactly the providence of a sound and healthy, hale mind. Whether or not he'll actually be found mentally incompetent, I frankly expect that will probably be something that comes up in trial and at court. But the ability to then follow through with that and do it, I to a certain extent can't even understand that mentality. But the fact that he parroted the former president, is concerning, to make no doubt about it. But then to say that therefore it is the fault, that's where the line of reasoning is lost for me anyway. I do thank you for the point in the call. We're due for that last break of this hour right now. Coming out of that, we'll take another call or two on the line, but otherwise wrap it up for the day. So back after this, more Talk El Paso. Again, that number, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Gateway Boulevard eastbound in North Yarborough. Watch for a crash there that's blocking the 3 right lanes. Expect delays. Stop and go traffic on the I-10 eastbound after Artcraft. Injury accident, Edgemere Boulevard, just west of Loop 375 Joe Battle. Another injury accident, Alameda at Brentwood. Gary Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by the new Our American Stories podcast.
Check out the new Our American Stories podcast, the show where the American people are the star, telling inspiring stories of history, sports, business, faith, and love, and your stories too. Subscribe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Take a trip back to Apartment 4D with the crew from the sitcom New Girl and rewatch the series with real-life friends Zooey Deschanel, Hannah Simone, and Lamorne Morris.
We could do a whole episode dedicated to Jake Johnson and his lack of awareness around certain technological things, especially with his phone.
Listen to Welcome to Our Show on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo.
I'm Scotty Clark from Scott Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. Department of Energy guidelines on attic insulation have changed significantly since many of our homes were built here in the El Paso area, and energy costs are rising at an alarming rate. Scott Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing can dramatically improve your home's energy efficiency by professionally installing 13 inches of high-performance fiberglass insulation to a typical 2,000 square foot attic for less than $42 a month. So what are you waiting for? Call Scott Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing today for a free estimate at 595-4529.
Under Governor Greg Abbott, the Texas economy is full speed ahead. Ranked the #1 state for business every year he's been governor. #1 in exporting products all over the world. #1 in businesses moving to the state. And well over 1 million new jobs since the pandemic. Under Governor Abbott's leadership, the Texas economy is the envy of the nation. But under Biden and Beto, Texas would come to a screeching halt. Open borders causing chaos and endangering our safety. Higher taxes hurting families and businesses. The Green New Deal crushing our economy. On March 1st, vote to keep Texas on the right track. Governor Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Coming up on the last bend of our show here today, a couple of updates on what we got going on. Be careful with that weather. If you haven't gotten that message already, looking at it turning real nasty starting into the evening and night tonight, and then being at below or even near zero below freezing overnight. So just stay safe, people, pets, plants, take care of all of those. A lot of advice out there. Check out what the lists on the latest closures and such from our news partners over at KFOX 14 and such. And just be safe out there. We know how things get around here when it just rains a little bit. So just particularly on the roads, should be on tomorrow. And that's some of the subjects we're working on for you, including kind of our supply chain and business issues this week. Talking about what the heck is going on in Canada with that protest. We'll be delving into that here. A bunch of ways you can participate in the show. We do have those phone lines and those phone calls. We'll be getting to hear what we can before the end of the show, but also those pound 250 calls. Do not forget about that, because that's one way you can leave us a message day or night, particularly if it's coming in at the end of the show and you're not quite able to get at us. Pound 250, keyword Talk El Paso, and you can leave us a message much like this.
This is Messiah Frankie. I just heard you say about that Governor Abbott and Costello fellow is going to win the primary. Oh, really? Oh, big whoop. No kidding. Really. He's a moron. And guess what? Other morons gravitate to morons. Guess what? Yeah, he's going to become a governor again. And then you can take your ERCOT electrical system. You guys with you Texans, you got to go on and do everything different from everybody else in the world because you got this brain-damaged idea that your idea is better. Well, guess what? Your electrical system sucks. And guess what? Another thing. I hope you freeze all your canucci's off, you morons.
And one of the many reasons I live in El Paso and not other parts of Texas, frankly, is we're not on ERCOT, so just remember that there. And I said primary, not general election, though odds are looking in the current polling pointing towards an Abbott victory. At this point, though, the original plan was for the O'Rourke campaign to be launching its electrical reliability tour of at least, I believe, 20 cities in Texas as of this Friday. Whether or not that truly launches off, we will see. Anyway, get to a couple more calls on the line if we have the time. We do have David over in Central with us right now. David, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir, Andrew. Yeah, I was just thinking, somebody will say something, a caller and stuff, and I mean, that's a great thing that people are interested in participating. But, then it causes me to say, well, I mean, I sure would like to respond to that. Mm-hmm. Right now, because there's going to be elections coming up and stuff, and I guess it's a great time. It's a great moment to be able to mention that about what happened to us here in El Paso, that shooting over at Walmart. But what happens is that for one, there's always on the Democrat side. And I may be always talking on the, I vote Republican. Thank God, that I seen the light like years ago. Somebody told me why. I asked them why is it that you vote a Republican? And that person that was very highly politically involved opened up my eyes. She said because it's always the same. It's always the same speech on the Democrat side. I forgot the exact word for it, but it really is. I'm so tired about hearing about racism. Right about now, like Johnny that just called in and stuff. If I was Afro-American, if I was African-American, if I was black, right about now, I would be so tired of the Democrats always talking about racism that I would be feeling like I was being used. It's like running an accident on the news over and over and over. Yes, we cover the news, even though they're not out there like say covering every moment of every day and stuff. If a relative of mine was, there's things that we have to be honorable about. And if I was because of the elections, and that shooting over at Walmart, I remember that Veronica Escobar came out here to Bel Air. She had a town hall and all that, and I went out there and spoke because I knew sure enough it was going to come down to that gun violence, and I'm so tired of hearing about also, and putting it on Trump. Trump had been out here to Thomason, and there was a big old rally. And it's always the same old thing, but it's always the same old thing on the Democrat side. So I went out there and I told her, I thought she had blood on her hands also. There was that shooting, and yes, crazy people do crazy things, but they're also picking up on what if they're doing something to try to some crazy person, goes so far as to firing a rifle at a bunch of people and stuff. They're crazy, but they're motivated. They're motivated by what people are doing that's incorrect on the part of the government. Not Veronica Escobar, and I hope she gets voted out. Like I told her when I went out there to that town hall meeting. I still hope she gets voted out. She was out here with the same group that was saying that the Border Patrol, her own constituents, that the Border Patrol had kids drinking out of toilets.
I do recall that tour you're talking about there was actually out there that day as the result of that when AOC and that group was from there. There's a lot more we can get into there, but we're going to have to leave it there for today because we are out of time here for this program. I do appreciate everyone who did call in, comment, participate in the show. Y'all do help make it. The participation is kind of critical because otherwise I'm just a guy in a room talking to myself. Well, I guess it's on the radio, but I appreciate the points in the call. We'll leave it there for today. Comments on Pound 250 if you want to, but otherwise, stay safe out there. Look for motorcycles when out on the road. We'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good evening.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Gateway Boulevard eastbound at Yarborough. Police on the scene of a crash. They closed 3 lanes there. There's delays in that area. The Gateway 10 is heavy with 5 to 10 minute delays from downtown to Trowbridge, both directions, east and westbound. I-10 westbound, stop and go from Rustler to Thorne. Gateway Boulevard westbound at Geronimo, an injury accident there. And Montana Avenue west of Airway, TMS on the scene. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Being a real estate agent isn't about listing houses. It's about connecting to people. I need to find new buyers every day. So I promote my listings using radio commercials from iHeartAdBuilder.com. Now every time I have an open house, it's a full house.
A custom radio ad from iHeartAdBuilder is the fast, affordable way to drive customers to your business. Put the power of radio to work for you. Get started now at iHeartAdBuilder.com.
When El Paso Children's Hospital first opened its doors in 2012, they forever changed pediatric healthcare in the region. More families stay in El Paso for specialty treatment instead of leaving town. More children have access to pediatric specialists. 7 pediatric specialty clinics help achieve the best possible outcomes. And there's so much more to come. El Paso Children's Hospital, celebrating 10 years of pediatric specialty care in the region. 10 years of wonder.
Stay informed at KTSMradio.com.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Because you never hear this.
Hey, hon, I'm late.
Chris, I am so pleased you missed the beginning of our meeting.
Thanks for making me wait, Dad. I talked to a lot of strangers.
Check on your commute. Stay informed. Traffic and weather all day. Or you might never hear the end of it.
Well, you were late to our anniversary dinner that one time.
Yes, how could I forget?
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. From deep in the heart of Texas to the Great Lakes, a massive winter storm is dumping snow and ice across the country. The National Weather Service is already receiving reports of a foot of snow on the ground in parts of Illinois and Indiana. Thousands of flights have been delayed or canceled nationwide because of the storm. Winter storm warnings remain in place from the Rocky Mountains all the way to Maine. The FBI is investigating a series of bomb threats against historically black colleges and universities across the U.S. According to the Bureau, more than 20 field offices are looking into the racially motivated threats as hate crimes. No explosive devices have been found at any of the campuses. However, the FBI says it's committed to thoroughly investigating the threats. New payroll data shows companies cut jobs in January as the Omicron variant spread across the country.
Companies were expected to add 200,000 jobs in January, but payroll processor ADP says private payrolls fell by 301,000 jobs last month, the first drop since December of 2020. Omicron is blamed for the drop as jobs in hospitality dried up. ADP predicts this will be temporary. The Labor Department will release its monthly report later this week, and it's already warning of a hiring slump blamed on the latest COVID surge. I'm Rory O'Neill.
The President and First Lady Jill Biden are relaunching the Cancer Moonshot. The program aims to cut the U.S. cancer death rate in half over the next 25 years. The President said it's a fight that both sides of the aisle can get behind.
And I know of nothing, as I think my colleagues would say, that's more bipartisan than take on this fight.
The First Lady noted a cancer diagnosis is devastating for families. She also said Americans are living in a golden age of research and discovery. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Johnson & Johnson is settling an opioid lawsuit with Native American tribes. The Washington Post reports the New Brunswick-based company, along with 3 distributors, have agreed to a $665 million settlement. The 2022 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction nominees are in, with many from the tri-state area. Lisa G explains.